Good morning, trade professionals. Welcome back to another episode of the SimplyTrade News Roundup. Today we have two women doing running this podcast. It's me, Annik. I'm obviously always here. And then we have Renee Cucurelli. Hi, Renee.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm glad to be here with you, Annie.
Yeah, it's good. I know. I don't know why I say good morning because you might be listening to this at all times of the day.
Yeah, or we might have some people in Europe, huh?
Right. And you know what? We are actually recording this on Friday. So for us, it is the day after Election Day, you could say. But I mean, Wednesday, we didn't find out until today, really, who became our new president. And you will listen to this, hopefully, the weekend after. So upcoming Monday for us now. And if you don't know by now, I think you should. The United States has a new president soon, the 47th elect, which is Donald Trump. He's been president prior, I think, in 2016, correct?
That's correct.
And he was reelected. So whether that was your choice or not doesn't really matter because he is in office now. He was voted by popular vote and electoral vote. Have to say it's not my choice. But you know what? I can't even vote. So here I am. But you know what we can do is look at policies and see, how trade is going to be affected or how it is going to be benefited. Because that's kind of what I like to do. I like to see, how anything can work out. And obviously we don't know how it will work out because he's not in office yet. But it's kind of exciting to see what will come in the future. And that's what we will kind of talk about, whether you are for one candidate or the other. Either way, we're gonna have to talk about it, and it'll affect everyone, So here we are. Yes. Anyways, I want to talk a little bit about everything, meaning tariffs, meaning climate change, kind of what his policies are, and where he sees things going. This is what he has maybe said in some rallies or what news stations are. So we're kind of going to get into that. Just an overview of it. We'll definitely get more into detail, I'm sure, with time as we're getting more details from him. But this is kind of an overview. So Renee, let me ask you. So just talking on Europe and our relationships and green trade, where do you see his stance on that being, or are there any implications, or starting with something very strong that I'm passionate about, but we'll definitely get into other things too. So let's talk on that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Annik. I also not my choice, but like you said, it's good to know and be educated about what the possibilities are. And some, we may benefit from some things and we may not. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But as far as green trade, I mean, his energy policy, and these are things that we've heard and said maybe from his rallies. He says, drill, baby, drill. Which means, he's getting back into fossil fuels and he's going to scrap what I've heard is the Inflation Reduction Act. And that act, has allocated $500 billion for projects for green technology and clean technology and renewable energy. And it creates jobs in states and it actually will help Europe if he does scrap that Inflation Reduction Act, because we have actually a head start. Yeah, because we are investing in it, the United States, America, we have a head start over some of the industries with wind, solar industry, and alternative fuels. So if that is scrapped, it actually might help Europe. But in my, in what I've read, that may not help us. And the U.S. is responsible for a tenth of the warming pollution, in the planet. And so a hotter planet means more natural disasters. So anyway, and actually Trump, when he pulls us out of these certain things, he's going to look to the EU to fund economies, the poorer countries, for climate action. So those are some of the things with green trade that might be interesting. And I know most customs agencies around the world are investing in green trade. It's a big initiative for a lot of agencies around the world.
I know being in Europe, I know green trade is a big thing here. We're really trying to invest in it as well here, right? But obviously, I mean, there's a different stance and different ways to go about it. So we'll have to watch out to that. But coming into relationships of different countries or continents like Europe, I know that he is which this is a big approach now is nearshoring, right? Is it reshoring or nearshoring? Nearshoring, and he's emphasizing that on that a lot because he wants most things to stay in America, right? And therefore, like China is one of the countries that'll probably be affected by his tariffs. And we're also not very fond of China because of what has happened with forced labor and stuff. We have a forced labor course if you need to take it and really understand it. But that is I think one thing that he's trying to eliminate, that relationship with China, and trying to get on maybe a better path by increasing tariffs. That's the idea.
Yeah, I think he's thinking of 60%. Right? Yeah, he's thinking of 60% on China across the board. That's what I'm reading. 10 to 20% every other nation and 60% China. But you know what I think happens is countries end up creating new supply chains and new relationships with other countries. So for example, China went to Brazil and Argentina. They used to buy a lot of farming, agricultural products from us. That's one of our largest industries in the U.S. And when this happened before, which I consider protectionism, right? And our country has gone back and forth, right? We started in some protectionism, came out. Trump's policy is protectionism. But what ends up happening, in my opinion, is they create relationships and supply chains with other countries where they can get their goods, right? So China went to Brazil and Argentina, and started trade agreements and relationships and started getting their agricultural goods from them. So there is some, I think he's got a great idea to bring the manufacturing back. That would be awesome. But because we're a global economy, we have some globalization, it's difficult to do that.
I can see that. And, and if he does do that, just like looking forward to that, it'll be interesting to see how his reaction will be if there is new supply chains going where China will be like, okay, like we'll be fine.
Yeah, and they've done it.
Which ultimately is not really what you want, because you want to have like a relationship with other countries, right? No country is really able to stand on its own. It's just impossible. So that's interesting to see, but obviously, yeah, I do agree with having the jobs in China, not in China, in the U.S. and creating more of those manufacturing jobs and hopefully increasing some profits.
Yeah, and he wants, his goal is to change the trade deficit, right? Meaning a trade deficit is the amount by which a country imports exceeds the value of their exports, right? So he wants our exports to increase and our imports to decrease.
Well, I was, you're saying exports, and here we are, and that's what I've kind of gathered from, what he's saying and what the news outlets are putting out, is that he's likely wanting to double down on expanding market access for U.S. products. Where do you see that going, or what is your kind of idea of that?
I believe that when you create a culture or a climate of protectionism, it crosses both import and export, right? So when you start slapping 10 to 20% tariffs across the board and 60% on China, they're going to retaliate. Their businesses are going to be like, wait, you're going to have our businesses pay, or, our trade is going to be impacted with those kind of tariffs. So I feel like our exports, while he, wants to increase the exports, and like I said, that's a great idea. They're going to be impacted by this protectionism climate.
Yeah, It's funny because I'm obviously on the other side of the world, and I'm reading German news. So while in America you read American news, right? Everything that's happening and how you might be impacted. Like it's not only impacting America; it's impacting the entire world. You know, America is one of the largest economies, so I mean, it's just going to impact countries if there's changes. And so Germany, I know that the car industry is kind of not like kind of worried on what's going to happen because I know our exports have decreased. So I think that they're a little bit on edge, not knowing what will happen and what they can expect from the change. So I think that's a very interesting part of the industry to look at, to see where. And you don't, I don't know, I'm so in between two countries. Like obviously I want the German economy to flourish too, but I also want the American economy to flourish. So it kind of has to be a balance. It's like you have to take care of your neighbor. I always think it as that.
Yes, I agree.
Just
Annik,
like our neighbors at our house.
Annik, that is so well said. You have to take care of your neighbor. That should be the name of the podcast.
You have to take care of your neighbor.
Our podcast. No, just this episode. You have to take care of your neighbor.
Yeah. Take care of your neighbor.
I mean, it's impactful for every nation, obviously. And like I said, it's honorable what he is trying to do, which is bring back manufacturing. Okay. Protect certain industries. And, I've been doing trade for 30 plus years, and we do protect certain industries, but we don't do it generally with protectionism, all the time. Right. So the last few decades, we haven't used that method, right, to protect our industries. We've used anti-dumping, countervailing, like you said, forced labor. Of course, we're protecting our neighbors. We're protecting our consumers by making sure we're not buying products with forced labor in them. And there's a lot of ways to bring back manufacturing to the U.S. And like you said, protect our neighbors and make sure each economy in the world is flourishing, right? And free trade agreements, and there's a lot of things we can do to help each other with globalization, right? Versus shut the door, lock it down. It's not my opinion that that's a good practice.
In my opinion, I don't see it that's going to help anything, but we don't know. We don't know. And we don't also know if he's going to do that, because obviously he does want relationships. And there's another thing, because I think this is a positive too, is the initiatives to support American businesses in accessing international markets. I do think that'll be a big, hopefully, part of his job is to, positive, because you want these small businesses to flourish and have international access. And you also, I mean, just like the big markets, but small businesses also what you want them to flourish so they can make more money and then bring more to the economy and then ultimately give more to the people. I mean, it's just like a line. And I hope that really works out for him and, for the businesses.
Yeah. And there's a couple for our audience, our listeners, there's a couple studies done. So one study, a Trump campaign spokesperson, there was a study from the Coalition for a Prosperous America, and it's a tariff advocacy group. And it shows that the 10% universal tariff would not cause meaningful price increases, and combined with offsetting tax cuts. So he's going to have to put some tax cuts in place, right? They're saying it would generate, $728 billion worth of economic growth and 2.8 million jobs. So we'll see. Like you said, now Yale has a study that estimates that the total reduction in annual household will, with all these tariffs, will be close to $2,600, because of the retaliation. It could reach up to $7,600. So, I mean, so our audience, we have to get educated. I think that's what's important about this, new, administration, is to keep ourselves educated.
I actually do have a question on that. Because because that is talked about a lot in terms of the tariffs. And I know tariffs are huge in trade, right? I mean, as regular people, from day to day, we talk about tariffs, and some people don't really understand them. Maybe I'm one of them, maybe not. I do think I know some of it, but it is very complex. And a question I have is, so him imposing, let's say 20% or 10% tariffs on, let's say, German cars, right? So import tariffs. So they're coming to the United States, we're importing them. The tariff is paid at the customs side by the Americans, right?
That's correct. It's paid by the U.S. business, right? Now, could the U.S. business negotiate with the supplier, say in Germany, for the car manufacturer in Germany? Could the U.S. importer slash business say, "Hey, I'm paying 20% tariff. Can we split it?" That's a possibility, right? But most times the U.S. business pays for the tariff and then has to pass it on to the U.S. consumer. I mean, that's generally the case. That's generally the case. So, and does the money go to the government? Yes. Will Trump's administration?
Okay. No, you made a good point. Okay, because I mean, I that's exactly how I was thinking about it, but I just wanted to reassure. Also, didn't know that about the split. I guess that's a benefit for the businesses in America then.
But these nations probably won't want to do the split because they'll be like, wait a minute, you're charging all of it's a complicated relationship, right? To do that. But if you have a long-term relationship and you think it's maybe temporary, maybe the German car manufacturer would and take some of that impact, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The last thing we want to do is put it on to the consumer. I think that's like what the American people do not want. And I don't know if quite a lot of people understand that, but you know what? That it is what it is, and we don't know if that'll happen or how it will happen. We haven't heard any of the rules, but it's good to know how the tariffs work and who it gets passed on, and if there's anything we can do about it. Um, on another what okay, I think we touched on import export, we touched on green trade quite a bit, we supply chain, new internet, accessing new international markets, which is great. So they're really, I mean, it is really there's positive, there's negatives, which is in any presidency. I feel like you will never have a president in office that you will have just positives. There's just no such thing. And obviously, we are talking based on like kind of what was said, the studies, obviously, and just reading things. But we'll still have to wait for what's to come, and I guess we can report more when that is happening, and maybe even get someone that is totally in the field. And
yes, like a political
that'll be
analyst.
exciting.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
But
I
this is
know.
a great start, Annik.
I know. I'm really happy we got to talk about this, especially it's so weird because in my life, obviously, I don't think much about trade. Like in just my personal life, there's much more that I care about. But talking about trade, there's also so many aspects that people don't think about, or people don't even have the available, or they do have the availability because there is Google to look that up.
Or
but it's never like in
podcast.
your mind. Oh, let me look up. Yeah, exactly. But not really. They're like, oh, I have to look this up. That's me though. I Google everything. I'm like, oh, I don't know this. Google. It's really the greatest tool. But anyways, so grateful we got to talk on this and we got to hit a lot of points. And again, as the listener, we want to hear your opinions, kind of what you're expecting for your business. Please write us. Please let us know if you want to hear about anything else. And I also want to remind you that we do have a new on-demand course on Global Training Center, which is the CTPAT cybersecurity course, awareness course. Actually, if you're just not sure on what it is or why you need it, if you just go on Global Training Center on the on-demand, you can find it on our page and you can watch the introduction video. It's actually like the first 3 minutes giving you exactly what it's about. And yeah, Renee, do you have any remarks on that?
No, I think it's awesome. And you know what? You can take it on your own time. It's flexible. It's on demand. So I would check it out, and I would, make sure you educate yourself on these policies. Trade, like Annik said, it's kind of not on people's forefront, but it's very impactful to our economy and the world economy. I would make sure to listen into SimplyTrade, and like Annik said, Google. In my day, we had to go to the library to find stuff out. But
I am so sure that Andy and Lalo will have loads of people talking on this and seeing what happened, and like have, different people in different areas talking on policies and whatnot. So I'm kind of excited to hear and see, where we're going. And yeah, I mean, the future is really unknown, and now is here. So we're just going to be waiting and seeing what will come out of it. So thank you so much for coming on, Renee. It's always great to have you. And
thank you, Annik.
I will see you guys back. Thank you. I will see you guys back next Monday. Have a great week, and yeah, bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. SimplyTrade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor SimplyTrade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at SimplyTradePod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. SimplyTrade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by SimplyTrade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.